Hello casual suckers, welcome to the first episode of AI Lestat representing the ugly truth. In this channel we are going to talk about everything that bald Dana does us not to talk about. Things like matchmaking, steroid abuse and many more. The UFC has enlisted USADA to manage its banned substance program. Many banned substances are not steroids. Lyoto Machida was suspended for taking 7-keto to help cut weight. Some of the steroids which are banned won't make you bigger or stronger. John Jones was suspended at UFC 200 for letrozole and clomiphene, which are not steroids. However, both lower estrogen and raise testosterone levels and are commonly used after a steroid cycle to maintain gains and kickstart testosterone production. John is currently suspended for metabolites of turinabol, a steroid which was the choice of the East German swim team in the 1970s. Josh Barnett appealed his recent suspension, and was cleared of using steroids and was found not at fault for using a tainted supplement. Tainted supplements are a problem as the industry is not regulated and some companies make subtle changes to steroids. Enough to change them technically from the original steroid to a legal substance. However, still not able to avoid detection as a banned substance. This is the most common defense for UFC fighters who are caught using banned substances. Randy Couture, Dan Henderson, Frank Mir, and others had in the past been granted an exemption by the UFC for TRT, which allowed them to have a high testosterone to epi-testosterone level. They no longer grant those exceptions. Randy Couture and Dan Henderson continued to perform well in their 40s under this exemption. As long as there are performance-enhancing steroids available, people will take them to raise their performance. USADA testing is rigorous. However, they chased Lance Armstrong for years and he never failed a test. As long as there are tests, there will be ways to cheat those tests. It's hard to say how many UFC fighters are on steroids. When Anderson Silva tested positive for anabolic steroids back in 2015, it was like having the wind taken out of our sails. The legend, arguably the greatest fighter of all time, found with steroids in his system. But was this the truth that a few fighters have been telling for years? Is everyone in MMA on steroids? It's a very dark and dangerous subject to address, and essentially could undermine the sport in its entirety if true. The question is so much greater than just how many people are cheating, and it pays to remember that USADA hasn't even found their stride with this whole MMA testing program. Once they do, it could spell trouble for paying fans and also the promotion. Could it have had anything to do with the Fertitas selling the UFC and moving on? That would be purely a speculative opinion. Lombard tiring 5 UFC and Pride legend Dan Henderson recently opined on the controversial topic, claiming steroid use would simply evolve with the trends of testing. An alarming prediction, but there are already loopholes appearing in the testing regime with the new go-to excuse of tainted supplements. Could it be that fighters are beginning to take the risk of getting busted because a lighter sentence can be handed down if tainted supplements are confirmed? Again, purely speculative, but an interesting point nonetheless. The truth of the matter is that steroids have been around MMA way longer than any form of credible drug testing. In the long run, we could well see a new generation of clean fighters take over the sport, and possibly the case of Michael Bisping is an example of that. Not to accuse Luke Rockhold of steroid abuse, but the Count has seen a considerable rise in form since USADA came around. The same cannot be said for many of the fighters that defeated the British middleweight during the TRT era and pre-USADA time. Bisping celebrates Rockhold KO, so what is in store for the future of MMA? One thing is for sure, either through physical form, failed tests, or maybe a drop in fighting success, we will eventually have a better picture of how rampant steroids are, and were, in MMA. Is everyone using steroids? Well, it could be safer to assume yes than no, especially given recent scandals that have been smearing the sport. But again, that's just an assumption. Hopefully USADA can answer that question and solve any relevant problems as the UFC goes forward with new ownership. At the end of the day, the UFC should be applauded for cracking down on the plague that is doping, and their approach is something which other sports and other MMA promotions could really learn from. Similarities can be drawn to cycling, which has encountered its own problems with PEDs in recent years but whose authorities have taken a strict approach to testing and competition bans. The bans imposed on MMA fighters are a good start, but steroids can have permanent effects on the human body. Although fighters may be clean, they have already reaped the benefits of PEDs, physically as well as their fight record, so stricter sanctions have to be considered in the interest of making the sport fairer. There will always be parts of the world and MMA promotions that do not impose any strict testing. This allows freak shows and behemoths with unsettling vascularity and strength to compete in combat against other human beings, which borders on the inhumane. Of course, there is an argument as to whether this is even a bad thing or not. MMA is a sport with promotions that solely want to provide entertainment, and generally that is all the fans want. We can let these mosquitoes buzz in bliss, but as long as the top organizations are doing all they can to promote fair competition, the sport of MMA will continue to grow. With the UFC's increase in random drug tests, and hiring USADA to clean up the sport, people are wondering whether or not fighters are still able to get away with taking steroids. It seems that with a lot of busts, there's always an excuse like tainted supplements, or my doctor gave it to me. Does that mean that UFC fighters have legitimately stopped juicing, and everyone's playing fair now, except for the occasional accidental mistake? Unlikely. An anonymous source on Reddit revealed exactly how a fighter can go about using micro-dosages and how their team will give them frequent drug tests to ensure that no matter when USADA comes knocking, the fighter is within that 1-hour window to have time to flush their system and pass the test. For example, by taking it right before leaving for the gym, and taking a long time to drive to the gym, the fighter is buying themselves some time off the grid, since they couldn't answer their phone while driving. It's all really interesting, and it seems to make sense, although again, it's an anonymous source, to take it with a grain of salt. Wake up, piss, eat, drink water, wait for about 7:30 a.m. to know there is no USADA morning knock. Make sure USADA never gets your overnight piss. Immediately microdes testosterone, specifically testosterone suspension with no ester and commonly available to those trying to find it. Stings like a bitch, but after so many years she's used to it. Multiple injection sites cause go big or go home, and you wants to speed up its action and flush. Remember pic of John Jones with 3 bumps on his abs. Then drives to the gym, just before starting the workout pops a Lasix tab, furosemide, then starts hitting the workout hard, feeling great. Starts to pound water like crazy near the end of the training session. Bathroom first cause the water is starting to really flow. No USADA drive up. Awesome. Put the Advil chewables away cause you don't have to mask the Lasix today. Drives home gulping water from a 4-gallon water jug every minute. Body is flushed of any detectable test 6 hours after the injection. USADA clean again. Same process for the evening workout. After lunch go to the gym. No USADA boys by 2 p.m. Inject your evening testosterone and get at it. Of course this routine gets dialed in by your support staff. You're not stupid and you ain't gonna take a test that you don't know you will pass. You keep records of what you did the past week. Exact times, exact milligrams, water consumption totals. Your support staff do a morning test just as if they were USADA. Piss and blood. Next day they do a test at noon in your workout facility bathroom. A few days later they do a test at 9 p.m. at your home. Your support staff run the exact same tests USADA does, down to the exact same equipment model that USADA uses. Depending on your test results they up, lower dosages, adjust timings, etc. You may need a bigger flush in the evening than other program participants. You may have to take less test in the morning to stay safe. Each person is a little different and you get dialed in for what is optimal for you personally. Of course USADA can be a little tricky sometimes. They can show up at off times, times you are sure to be hot. You've got 3 not available before you get a failure, so you don't answer the door. Slip out of the training center as soon as the USADA warning sign is given. However, you can be tricky with USADA yourself. Last second reporting you are training somewhere else buys you some time before they could possibly make new arrangements to get someone to the new place. Remote training facilities is another tried and true trick. This is just a basic, low-cost way to performance enhance and minimize potential detection. So, there you have it. If you want to be a UFC fighter and to get away with taking steroids, it really doesn't sound that difficult. Thank you for listening. Subscribe for more MMA-related content.